I think in the early stages of relationships, there are certain things that people miss. Like, for an example, awukho umuzi ongenamthetho wakhona. Why do we treat relationships outside of institutions?
Yes,
You know, let's lay the rules. I always say, this could be wrong. Men are very honest beings.
Okay.
Yes.
Please.
No matter how much.
Educate us.
I feel
What's so
men
honest?
are honest beings. We miss the cues. Communicated or uncommunicated, we miss the cues. If I am, as a mom, I need to, make sure that you guys are fine. I'm not going to sit and think about your emotions. That's the last thing in my head, Will that person that you're mourning be okay with the fact that you're still sitting there? And because there are certain things that you're missing out, do you know what I mean? Or there are certain things also that you're not looking at,
Correct.
Even with their passing as well. Because other people, they would use like a belief system to say, it was isikhathi kaNkulunkulu. So if then you're a believer,
that will help you get through.
Yes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Between Meetings, the podcast, hosted by me, Aphiwe Khambule. On today's episode, I have a very special guest. We started off as gym partners, and our relationship has evolved into a work relationship, and beyond that, learning to lean on each other as sisters. I have Slindile Thabede, who's here as a clinical social worker, who currently holds an MBA, but I'll let her elaborate a bit more on who she is and what she does. Sli, welcome.
Welcome, sis.
Thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. So before we dive into today's topic, can you tell us a bit more about who Sli? I know she's a very proud Zulu girl from Nkandla.
Yes.
But for our listeners and our viewers today, who is she?
Who is Sli? Sli is a rural girl, like you said, Uguti, proudly from Nkandla, a small town. And I hold a BA, honors degree in social work, clinical social work, and I then went on, did MBA, currently doing my PhD. Yes.
Wow.
Exhausting.
Round of applause.
Very exhausting.
Educated woman.
Hey,
amazing.
We try.
You look great. You are doing
so
it.
Much.
You're doing
Thank
phenomenal.
Thank you so much. Over and above that, I'm a mom of 2 and a proud mom, an exhausted mom.
Oh, no.
That's who I am.
But it's rewarding, I'm sure.
It is, very much so.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So on today's show, I think it's very important, the topic we're talking about, grief. So as you know, 21st century funerals, we deal a lot with grief.
Yes.
And not just for me as a leader, but I think it's important for our listeners and viewers as well to understand how to support someone through that grieving and loss process. And when you become the person who experiences loss, how do you navigate through that? So I think let's start off by opening, maybe you giving us a bit more understanding on what grief is.
Yes. So grief, I'm just going to explain the different types of loss, and then what happens afterwards. But I guess, your guests or your audience will get the gist of it. So grief is a natural response that could be emotionally or physically in terms of how it is displaying itself. This is after you've lost someone. You've lost a loved one or something that you've cherished, whether it could be a relationship or a job. And then bereavement is an objective fact that grief has happened, or you have definitely lost someone, and now you're responding to that. And the impact of that grief or that bereavement is, I would say, people experience it differently because people respond differently to bereavement or to grief, if we may call it that. And again, these terms are used interchangeably. And then there is mourning. Mourning is when it's an external expectation, or it's an external, I would say, response where usually people then, it's an expectation that, okay, this person has lost someone and therefore they're going through that process or a phase. So it's an external process now where people are responding in a cultural, social, or in a religious manner. There are expectations that people should behave in a certain way as a result of loss or bereavement.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, I did not know
Yeah.
that there was a difference between the different
There
types.
is. There
So
is.
I'm busy lump summing it all, saying grief.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a bit more unpacking to do in
Yes.
that. There's
Yes.
grief and bereavement, I
Yeah.
think you said, and
Yeah.
then the mourning stage.
Yes.
So would you say grieving is the first component, and then is there an end component, and would you call that mourning?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. So basically, if you want to take it in stages or in phases, I would say the mourning is the last stage, when everything else has happened, when the process is done, when the process of ungcwaba, for an
Yeah.
example, is done, or sezwile ukuthi ubani ushonile, sesingcwabile, and that admin in between, then people then are mourning afterwards. Yes, and the practices that happens, or the rituals rather, that happens in the mourning stage are based on, or I would say looked at based on the cultural aspect or the religious aspect, how we get socialized. People grieve and mourn differently. Like, for an example, where I come from, in Makaya, the mourning, how you would know in a cultural aspect that a person is mourning is by wearing inzilo.
Yes.
So that's a cultural aspect
Okay.
of it.
Okay.
Or in a religious point of view, while in the process there would be abathandazibeleti in konzo.
inkonzo,
That is on the religious point of view. So yeah, if you look at it in stages, then yes, the mourning
Is the
stage
end.
is the end. Yeah.
So njengoba usukhulumile, there's a part you touched on le where abantu bafike umthandazo when
Yes.
ushonelwe.
Yeah.
How does one, as someone who's experiencing loss in that setting,
Yeah.
I think culturally we've now, emotional, you end up becoming in that process when ususugijima nakabantu, you know, ngaleso sikhathi where you're supposed to be grieving,
Yeah.
or as you said, be in
Yeah.
bereavement.
Yeah.
How then do we educate or navigate that without amasiko being neglected in a way?
Yeah. If I hear you correctly, I would say, one, from a cultural perspective, we as Black people, we have not been taught on how to process emotions.
Yeah, okay.
In that sense, yes.
Yeah.
And then we mislabel emotions, or people mislabel how people were responding to, I would say, ukuzwa ukuthi umuntu usedlulile emhlabeni, or a family member esedlulile emhlabeni. So that process also delays the, I would say, the coping part of it, because it takes admin, if we were to call it, takes a center stage.
Yes.
And then the bereaving part of it, or ukuya through the phases of grief, takes the backstage, which then, from a psychological point of view, could delay the process of you grieving, because there is no time. Admin takes priority. There is no time for one to be sitting and crying. We need to know ukuthi ube unayiphi cover. You know what I mean? Kunabantu abafikile, we need to make tea and coffees and whatnot. You know, so it's navigating that process, I would say, or that period. I would say you need to be as honest as possible with finding little pockets of just immersing your emotions to the ordeal. You know, how are you feeling? Check in with yourself, check in with people who are around you. And again, I think because dynamics of families have changed, ordinarily the running around would be taken care of by the relatives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But dynamics of families have changed. Yeah.
So, njengoba like you advise people to umuntu to check in on those around them.
Yeah.
Wena who's experiencing that loss,
Yeah.
and you're someone who withdraws from everyone around you, and at home, futhi most cousin, they might mislabel it as, you know, you're
Yeah.
not being supportive,
Yeah.
or you're not wanting to assist. Those settings, those family settings, what would you advise right now, or to someone who is kind of grieving and they don't know how to ask for help?
Yeah. I would say that it is very important that you are you acknowledge the phase you're going through, you acknowledge the trauma and the impact of it, and it is okay also, give yourself permission to seek support. I think it also, to a certain degree, goes back to how we've been socialized. And again, whether do people have support or not, that's also another question. Do you know what I mean? And even before this grief has occurred, maybe there was no support. Then how do you then start raising your hand for support now just because? Do you know what I mean? But I think it is maybe just also trusting that people who are there showing up for you are there for you. And using that opportunity, I would say take a chance of people who are there, and not to say delegate, but just ask for support. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah,
Jobos, you've touched on the different grief, bereavement, and mourning. I think most of us have, from a psychology, have been taught that grieving alone has 5 stages.
Yeah.
There's the stage, maybe you can take us through that,
Yeah.
and how, now that you've mentioned there's different meanings, is that the same as well with bereavement and mourning? Are there different
Yes.
sub-stages within that process?
It's a combination of things.
Okay.
There are stages of grief, which one, I would say, maybe just after hearing that you've lost someone, you get shocked.
Yeah.
Right? You are in disbelief, then you depending on the nature of death, but sometimes also even outside of the nature of death, you get angry, and you bargain. That's stage number 3, where you if someone was sick, for an example, or if you lost someone through an accident, then you're like, I wish I could have called them before. Ngibone SMS yakhe, you know what I mean? I wish I could have, to a certain degree, maybe distracted them or whatever. It's the if stages. I wish I could have done 1, 2, 3, and 4. I wish. So that's called a bargaining stage. Okay. And then you get to a stage where you process those emotions, but then you get to a stage where you accept that this is my reality. But not everyone gets there or goes through these stages at the same time.
Okay.
Because we process differently.
Okay.
And then the sub stages within are as dependent on whether do you have support or not, whether you're processing in a healthy way or not. And when people are crying, taking it back to the culture or maybe the expectation, let them cry. There's nothing wrong with it. They whatever emotions they're feeling, they're processing them. You process them very through crying. Those raw emotions, you process them through crying, through acknowledging, and of course the support. But we don't get to these stages at the same time. We may be from the same family, we may have lost the same person, but we don't get to these stages or to the acceptance stage in the same way.
Hey guys, it's Aphiwe here. Just to quickly bring a bit more information on our sponsors, 21st Century Funeral Services. Did you know that 21st Century Funeral policies all include catering? And then on top of that, they offer free repatriation throughout South Africa and SADC regions. What is repatriation, you're wondering? It is when you want to move your loved ones from one place to another. So for example, Johannesburg to Cape Town. We can offer you that service free of charge. To get a free quote, send us a WhatsApp message on 065-995-4606. So I like what you've said, that we don't go through the grieving at the same pace at the same time.
Yeah.
For someone who might have lost someone 10 years ago, and they're probably still stuck in the second, which they don't want to get fully too accepting, that this is my reality. They're still angry at the world. They're still struggling with coming to terms that, why did I lose this person? Especially if it's unexpected way.
Yeah.
How do you help that person now get to that final step, that acceptance of the reality.
Yeah.
Because they probably switch off. They don't want to talk about this person anymore. They don't want to hear anything. They don't want something to remind them of the person. How not do we help them get to the acceptance stage?
Yeah, I think picking from what you are mentioning or the example you are using, the not wanting to get to that stage, there are people, I would say patients or people that we see or people who are responding differently from, the ordinary way of responding or the so common way of responding, where one refuses because it is the only thing sitting onto grief, onto this bereavement is the only thing that brings them closer to this particular person.
Sure.
Do you get me?
I hear you.
So then it feels guilty. They feel guilty on days where they're laughing. No, on days where they feeling a bit lighter, they feel guilty as if they're cheating this person. Do you know?
Ish.
Yeah.
So then, lo muntu, how do they heal? When do they get to the point where they don't feel guilty? Because not to disregard the emotion, but life must continue, and the person they've lost would have wanted that for them to continue living, enjoying life,
Yeah.
So now if you're going to guilt trip yourself, how do you come out of that?
I think our role as practitioners, as supporters, as therapists, as people call us, I think is to make them aware and mindful of what are they doing or what they've been going through that is making them delay or having these delays in getting to that stage of coping, and make them aware that it is not about, we're not rushing you to get there, but we're pointing out the things that are hindering you from getting to that point. And we could use your example that you just mentioned now to say, will that person that you're mourning be okay with the fact that you're still sitting there? And because there are certain things that you're missing out, do you know what I mean? Or there are certain things also that you're not looking at, even with their passing as well. Because other people, they would use like a belief system to say, it was Katsikankulunkulu. So if then you're a believer,
that will help you get through.
Yes. So you use that as a coping mechanism. You use your belief system as a coping mechanism. You also use the experience you had with that person as a reason why you should carry on. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
For them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
So I like what you've touched on there, and I want to kind of make like a holistic view, because sometimes it might not be losing a loved one that gets you stuck with moving forward.
Yeah.
It can sometimes be losing a job opportunity or losing this house or car that you wanted, and now you feel like you've been set back. Because I think sometimes in this world we live in, we have all these pressures that we see now. I find like back in the days where there was no social media. Now you log on social media, you see someone's bought a car, you see someone's been promoted, you see this, and now you're not getting these things. You feel like you are being hindered back. For people like that who feel like life is not going anywhere, they may feel like they're also mourning in a way. How do we help them? Because I've heard you speak on the death aspect. They can come see therapists, they can navigate. You use religious coping. You speak to them about how the person they've lost would have wanted them to move on. Now, in this instance where they can't use someone who's lost to help them continue pushing forward, how would you now set that narrative and that conversation?
I think say for an example, the example you putting out now. The first thing is I think we go through life, right, and the challenges and whatnot, and we set our own expectations of what should our life be. Correct. Right? The question is, are we being fair to ourselves? And whether you've lost a job as a result of whatever, and you couldn't do this and the other, and therefore you've also lost other things, maybe material stuff, because you could not pay and whatnot. I think it's just to recognize or realize where you're at, emotionally, where you at in response of whatever loss that you've experienced, and realistically, from an emotional coping point of view or a physical coping point of view, if you are thinking my life is not the same as that other person, or I'm no longer seen as a provider because I've lost this and the other, right? So the people around you, are they making you feel that way, or is this something that you are doing to yourself, meaning that you're sabotaging yourself, you know? And again, if these are the things that you can still work on, then what is it that you need to do? You know, what is it that you need to do to get there, if not closer, you know? And again, why even there is a need for us to define ourselves through, you know, imsebenzi and whatnot. And yes, impilo, but, you know, there are certain things that we also need to be realistic about. And people around us, especially in this economy, people around us, are we honest enough with each other in terms of what we can do and cannot do?
I like that. And I think the point that you've made, that your support system, the people around you, question them as well. Communicate how you want them to show up in your life. I just want to take it a step back. There's something that you said which is still ringing in my head even now. You mentioned how, as Black people, we were never taught how to deal with emotions. We were never helped to navigate with emotions. Why do you think that's so? And what does that mean now for us, who, especially you as a mom who's raising young girls? How do you now navigate that without you being labeled umlung or like neglecting your culture in a way?
The first layer of your question, or the first part, is I think socialization played a huge role in terms of not being taught, because also they babengazi nabo, you know, some emotions sasingekho, we needed to get food on the table.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Umama was the only one wayesekhaya, and with all these chores and responsibilities back in the days, and ubaba gekho, you know, migration. If I am, as a mom, I need to, you know, make sure that you guys are fine. I'm not going to sit and think about your emotions. That's the last thing in my head, you know? So from that, I think we've always been, any emotion that you show, uyashayelwa yona. Whether uyakhala, and no one cares to ask why you're crying. You know, uzoshawelwa yona instead ukuthi uyakhala, you know. And I think it's very dismissive. It's a very dismissive method of dealing with issues, but they also didn't know better. There was no other way, you know. And navigating it now, to your question, I still myself find it very hard, even in responding to my children, as much as I'm in the space of umsebenzi, you know, it's within my line, and people would think Usli maybe knows how to, you know, care for her kids' emotions and whatnot. Sometimes I lose it myself. Like, move.
Can you elaborate a bit more on that?
I think it is the setup of our families, you know, because families, the definition of family is not always what is in the dictionary. It's not always a mom and a dad. 100% it is not always a mom, dad, gogo, and, you know. So the family setup, the structure is different. And sometimes how people cope, or how people are mindful and aware of their emotions, it is also based on whether do you have enough support or not. If you are a single mom raising your children, best believe there's not much time for emotions, because mommy has to be the provider, right? So meaning that there are certain things that gets traded off. But then again, is it the best way of doing it? No, it's not. Do we know that it's not? We do know. I think we do.
Yes. I believe we do know.
I think we do know. Yeah, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but I think, Jo, like how you've said, it's how we're brought up. our parents brought us up not knowing as well.
Yes.
So we've taken their upbringing.
Yeah.
Because, we're all living on this earth for the first time.
Yes.
So you take this worked when my mom and dad or whoever was raising me. So surely it would work as well.
Yeah.
For who I'm raising. Because look at me now.
Yeah.
I came out this and this. And I think in that we actually do a lot more damage to ourselves and to the people we upbring, because we should be open to relearning and unlearning things.
Yeah.
And Njomo Bush was like, they didn't know. But now how do we now educate them to know?
Yeah.
Because they're still living, they're still going to be grandparents, they're going to be aunts, uncles. So you can't take that, what you've learned of being, shower, be like, why are you crying?
Yeah.
And do that to the next kid.
Yeah.
I think these kids now know
Yeah.
that I must be socially aware.
Yeah.
We didn't have that room to be socially aware. We are now, especially yourself, are raising daughters who you've given them that room to be socially aware. They must tell you, Mommy, I don't like this. Mommy, this hurt my feelings, And you can't shut it down now and be like, no, okay, I don't care about your feelings. This is how it is. This is how it's going to move.
Yes.
Because schools now are learning about emotions.
Yes. Yeah.
So where I'm trying to go with this is that with us moving with the times and what's happening, how then do we ensure that our cultural beliefs move with those times as well?
Yeah. I think my understanding of that, and this is my opinion, is that what are the parts of our culture that we want to preserve, that one needs to first know and understand?
I like that.
As an individualism thing, like as an individual thing. What parts of my culture and my beliefs I want to preserve, and what is it that, in terms of a socialization, what is it that I want to work on and let go of? I think once you know what parts you want to preserve, then communicate that to your children and those around you. And also, can we also be open to having conversations? I also just feel like our culture, we just don't talk.
Yep.
There are a lot of assumptions and unspoken rules.
Correct.
And only when you find yourself in trouble, people then bring up stuff and you're like, whoa.
Yep.
Angikaze ngikusho lokhu.
That is very true.
So I think becoming more aware, I think I would also just say be open-minded as well. The kids are teaching us a thing or two. We've lived long enough with our children. I have lived long enough with my kid there are certain scenarios that happen or episodes that happen where I catch myself being taught. And I'm like, wow, a simple thing, if I may. One day I was driving him to school and this lady wang drive isagabi, and I'm like, how, mommy? Why? And his question was, how do you know she's a mom? Ngathi kuyena, it's the same thing how I call you ikehla but you're not ikehla, and the question still remained, by the way, how do you know she's a mom? And I had to say, actually, I don't know. I don't know that she's a mom or not. So that was me assuming just because she's female that she's a mom. So you see the biasness as well.
I like that.
And I was bangfake esikoleni.
And they're very socially aware. Their minds are evolving way faster than what we were at that age.
Yeah.
Because of how the world is moving.
Yes.
And I really like what you've said, that in that you need to understand yourself as an individual.
Yes.
Black woman, what part of my culture do I want to preserve?
Yes.
And for my kids to grow up and instill in them.
Yeah.
But One Tandile is what you've said when you mentioned we don't speak up and ask for help when we're dealing with a lot.
Yeah.
And and this, again, it's something that I feel, it's an opinion. I feel women have been given more room to speak up as opposed to men.
Yes.
So I want us to change and kind of scrutinize that the men now,
yes,
why is it that we're finding these challenges
Yes.
of GBV and men in general? Because back in the days, I do believe that it was also a challenge and an issue. It just
Yes.
wasn't as scrutinized.
Yeah.
Now that we're scrutinizing it and we're
Yes.
saying, men, sort this out.
Yes.
Is it, as women, should we get involved in that conversation? Or is that a conversation men need to have alone with unpacking?
I think it's a conversation that everyone should be part of so that we all understand their perspective as well, so they also understand our perspective as well. If we are going to continue having these conversations in silos, we're not going to win.
Correct.
We need to hear them. We need to understand what is behind the rage, what is behind the aggression. From my experience professionally, is that majority of the time, they don't feel heard.
Okay.
They are...
that is interesting.
yes, they don't feel heard.
Okay. In what way do they not feel heard? What is it that they feel like we are not listening to? If from your experience and what you've seen.
I think it is, it's a combination of things.
Okay.
What comes to my mind now is that we have focused so much, or society has focused so much on the development of a girl.
Okay.
Leaving a boy child behind.
Okay.
Yes. Even in our own families, more education, more values, more value talk, right, is with girls than men. I feel like we leave them to be abayithole, abayichwanele nyoka. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
But
Oh, wow.
like he must just navigate life by himself. I also think there is not much coaching.
Just to take you back a bit on that.
Yeah.
We spotlight females as opposed to men now.
Yeah.
Would you not say it's because of, in the past, women were so sidelined? I mean, we weren't allowed to work.
Yeah.
We didn't have the freedom to be independent.
Yeah.
So that now we're trying to catch up with what women didn't have in the past to what's happening currently.
Yes.
And in a sense, it could feel that men feel sidelined.
Yeah.
But they've always been in the room. They've always, had this conversation. They've been taught they need to be the providers.
Yeah.
They've been taught they need to go, approach a woman, need to get married.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm fair in saying that we're only doing that to catch up because of what happened in the women in the past.
Yeah.
But men have always been given that room and that space to navigate. I think as women as well, we're still having to navigate life.
Of course,
on
definitely.
Our own because we've never, like now as an independent woman, you're doing everything on your own. Who's telling you or guiding you in terms of how do you navigate now?
Yeah.
Instead you want to look for a partner, but people are like, no, you don't need a partner, do it on your own. So in a sense, I hear what you're saying, but I'm also like, but do you not think men
have always been?
Yes.
I think my point was more on, I would say from a socialization point of view.
Okay.
Now, if we take it to the boardroom, if we take it to, that's a different, you know what I mean, conversation altogether. But if collectively though, I think we've all just been disadvantaged.
Okay. That's correct.
We've all been disadvantaged
Especially
in our
as
own
black
way. Yes.
people. Yes.
As black people.
I agree.
But I think in the drive of getting women there, those that we left behind, we did not skill them enough, whether from a like skill from a psychological skilling in terms of how to, how to catch up point of view, or from a career development point of view, that now I think the shift or what has been happening, I don't think that men have mental capacity.
Okay, I'm with you. I hear you.
I don't think that they have mental capacity to deal.
Okay.
And these are conversations that every mother who has a boy child should be having, to say, Nana, because with females, from a personal point of view, we lean more on what we were taught.
Yes.
and then again, behavior is learned. So even in our drive of getting stuff done, right? It is
Yes.
there's a woman whom you've seen who's done it.
Okay.
Then it gives you more fuel to say, I can go. So, but with them, I don't think, even though they aren't much, I would say, even to those mhlambe who don't have much support, people are just minding their own business, so much so that there are people who are behind and who should be taken care of emotionally from an educational point of view, whether educating you on how to navigate impilo as a young man that might not find a job that's well paying.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, I'm with you.
that you are going to maybe be attracted to a Slindile who is maybe going to be earning way more than you. Do we go even to therapy and as let's make it make sense. Let's make you as a couple kaSlindile onobheki wakhe ohola kancane kunaye, so that you guys align, so that imali is not the factor, you know. So, and we've got our own scars, you know, and also underlying mental illness issues that no one speaks about.
Correct.
So it's a combination of things.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. So with now, as we're speaking, what would you say to these men who have not dealt, and we all know what's happening in the world right now.
Yeah.
We all know the reality
Yeah.
of what's happening. But how do you, especially those who might not have the financial means to be able to see a therapist,
Yeah.
or who see going to see a therapist as a sign of weakness?
Yes.
There's a lot of issue around
Yeah.
that when
Yeah.
it comes to the opposite sex.
Yeah. Yeah.
They still have that stigma with the speaking to someone about my problems
It's a
does
sign
not
of
make me a man.
weakness. Yeah. Yeah.
So now I want us to unpack that, because it goes dealing with something like that ends up affecting even how you deal with loss
Yes.
and grief.
Yes.
Because you have to uphold this thing, but then when you have to heal
Yeah.
and accept, like how we
Yeah.
were touching on earlier,
Yeah.
it can manifest into something else.
Yeah.
So then my thing is, how do we now guide these men
Yeah.
to dealing with these emotions, to
Yes.
becoming emotional and socially aware men?
Yeah, yeah. I think one, it is you know, understanding where you're at as a person, as a young man, and if where you at you are withandi,
Yeah.
you know, it is okay to be vulnerable. Like, we need to detach, destigmatize.
Yes.
You know, that thing yokuthi ay amadoda wakhali. So,
Yeah, ne?
because then that attaches shame, masekumele ukuthi ucela usizo, you know. So I think it is that, and it is also okay for them to go and seek support. They don't have, if you can't afford therapy, there are solid men that you see around you. What happened to going to Baba Wakabanbani that ombonayo ukuthi une integrity intact and say Baba ngiboni kahle, you know, angiboni kahle, angizizwa kahle, I feel like I'm stuck, you know. And it's also the responsibilities and the hats that people wear and the pedestals we put these men kuzo. And when they drop just one ball, he's a human being.
Yeah, ne?
You know, then words follow. We are expressors. They don't. They shut down. They, you know, withdraw. Tina siba loud. And already, if that platform was never created to say, feel safe with me, it is okay to be vulnerable, it is okay, and not use that against him one day or ever, you know, then you have someone that is capable of opening up to you so that you guys can find support for each other.
I like what you've said there, not using his vulnerability against him. I think, I'm sorry to say, but maybe I think I've been guilty of that. Because you don't do it intentionally,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
We express it.
Yeah.
In that moment, you're frustrated and you say something.
Yeah.
And then that person might turn to you and be like, but no, what are you saying that? That's not fair. Because I would never say that to you.
Yes. Yes.
How does someone like Aphiwe now watch her tongue to not use someone's weakness against them? Because that's not the intention, I promise. But it happens in the moment.
Yeah. I think in the early stages of relationships, there are certain things that people miss. Like, for an example, awukho umuzi ongenamthetho wakhona. Why do we treat relationships outside of institutions?
Yes.
Let's lay the rules.
Yes.
Let's lay the rules. And with that comes with, we need to be open with each other, with where we've been. Which is though something that men don't like.
That's the thing. And like you said earlier, they don't speak.
So ngamanye amazwi, you want to get into a relationship and you want to look perfect.
So since what do we do now? What happened? They help us.
And stuff has not been spoken about. Expectations have not been clarified. The deal breakers have not been clarified.
Yeah, I know.
Yes. Ukuthi, if you do 1, 2, 3, and 4,
the love language have not
I may see the door.
Hey.
Not only end in the reaching, in like ngizovula ngiphume, I think talking, man, communication, khuluman.
Exactly, because we speak, they don't speak. It makes it very hard for us to now try support this person.
Yeah.
Because they don't speak. It's the same thing with grieving and dealing with the emotions of death.
Yeah.
They don't speak.
Yeah.
They don't speak. One day when now is drinking more than they usually do, or they're now saying things in a certain way, or the behavior starts shifting.
Yes. Because
and when you want to confront them, you're not the bad person.
Yeah.
So now you find yourself stuck in this situation where you don't know, how do we go on beyond this now?
Yeah. I think one, we all are capable. We are capable beings of sorting our stuff out. But when you start noticing those patterns, that's when you need to reach out for support.
Okay.
Sometimes as girlfriends, right? Or as females, or as sisters, or as partners, we may not be the ones to assist, but give him or link him up with someone who's more comfortable. I always say, this could be wrong.
Okay.
Men are very honest beings.
Okay.
Yes.
Please.
No matter how much
educate us.
I feel
What's
men
so honest?
are honest beings. We miss the cues. Communicated or uncommunicated, we miss the cues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, how do they, if you say they're very honest and they communicate, how do we miss the cues? Because
we miss it because, Tina, we want to talk through things. We want to talk about stuff, right?
I don't think that's the best way. That's how you deal with it.
And as and when, if you've created that platform for someone to open up, they do open up.
Correct.
Right? But then it's the manner in which you encourage the talking, the opening up. It doesn't have to be with you, remember, which you don't have to be their person they open up to, but let it be that there is someone that he opens up to.
Okay.
Sometimes we buga ngendlela yeyingane, how when as a mother your kids would not open up to you, but they would open up to mamncane.
Okay.
Find mamncane wendoda yakho or kamfana wakho.
So then, Ngathi, you've mentioned how we miss the cues.
Yeah.
What cues would I have to look out for to be able to know, like, okay, he might not open up to me, but let me find him like umamncane.
Yeah.
What are the cues that we? Because they don't speak.
For an example, you know his routine. So the early stages of your relationship where it's honeymoon, that's how when you should be sitting with the pen, taking notes.
Okay. I'm with
Imaginary notes, mental notes, and because he's free, he's relaxed, he's, agnama expectations angago. If anything, we've spoken about certain stuff that would like to see happening and how you want to be treated and whatnot. But then now coming to get him to open up about stuff, you would also use the very same notes you were taking. Oh, it's okay. Now let me, you know. If this person has a friend that is more, that gets him to talk more, reach out to that friend and say, look, I think your friend, uting kuluma. You know, but I think we wait for izinto ukuthi zizonakale.
Yes,
When we
yes.
start seeing patterns early, ukuthi this person is using alcohol mhlampe as an escape now. You know, this person is not coping. This person, whether nihlala ndawonye or not, but mangikufonela awukho emsebenzini ongakafika emsebenzini, what's going on? You know, and if they can't really go to therapy, mfunela umngani wakho kwazi ukuthi akhulume, and then you guys can do your own caucus afterwards in terms of what really does he need.
Yeah.
You know, I think sometimes the mistake we make as females, maskuluma ngama context a relationship, we wanna own the change. I'm the one who made him change. You know what I mean? You can initiate. He doesn't have to open up to you. You can initiate the need for change.
But then what makes him not open up to you? Because
number of things.
You're supposed to be partners in this. You're navigating life together, the challenges together. So now if he can't feel comfortable enough to speak to me and he can talk to a friend, then what's the point of us doing this together?
It's the responses we get, the verbal and non-verbal, from people. A moment you start talking about your day, they look uninterested. But when they want to tell you about their friends and what was happening and whatnot, they want you to listen.
Yeah. So then I think then there's no point then in continuing a relationship like that, because if the person you're speaking to is not interested in you and, you know, your day, what then is going to make them change and make them suddenly interested?
Then it goes back to the early stages of a relationship. You were supposed to be taking notes to see if you are aligned or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if you feel like, I actually don't like this person's day, I don't care what he does in the day. Oh, no, he's not for me then. Or she's not for me, whoever it might be.
No.
Okay, I think there's been a lot of learning as well for me. From my also personal perspective, and I'm sure a lot of people also taking a lot from this as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's being a male in a relationship or being a couple who's navigating a relationship, or a woman who's trying to navigate the emotions of a relationship, as well as, you know, the psychology of just dealing with emotions and grieving.
Yeah.
I want us now we've touched on briefly on the culture aspect, but I want us now to unpack it as women.
Yeah.
Slee, I'm tired of being the strong woman. I'm tired of trying to look like I have it all together. You know, it's hard.
It is.
It's very hard.
It
and
is.
I think as women, we've, you know, kind of motivated and been a sisterhood that encourages all of us to be strong, independent.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
It is.
So now, culturally, as Black, and I think it's hard as a Black woman, to be quite honest.
Yes.
How do we now navigate that, and how do we help each other? Because sometimes if I can be really honest, I don't want to do anything. I want to be the soft girl who just, you know, things just magically happen. I would really love that. If someone asked me what I wanted to do with my life, if I could pick anything right now, it'd be lying in bed and just watching Korean dramas all day.
Yes.
But I can't do that.
Yeah.
And I have to show up in the office, be the leader, the strong leader. I get home, I have to show up as the first daughter, be the daughter who sets the example, you know. And then outside of home, when I have to go see my partner, I have to show up as, you know, the supportive girlfriend. I have to help him if he's hungry. I have to ask, you know.
Yeah.
So I have to show that, like, I can be. So there's no one time where it turns around and it's about, like, shame, Aphiwe, are you okay? Even if it's okay, I can't be honest. I have to be like, no, I've got this. You know, everyone to be like, no, you've got this. You can do this. You know? And it's like, no, I can't. It's so hard. What happens now? How do we deal with that?
I think also iphendulile. You know, you mentioned it's the honesty. It's the honesty with the self. And I think also just like those around you, you know, for an example, and again, I think we touched on it a bit, where we spoke about pedestals. We put ourselves in these pedestals, and sometimes not directly,
Yeah.
Sometimes we get placed also. Do you know what I mean? Because I also feel like in what we do or in what you do, it's not because you picked it. It picked you.
Correct.
So sometimes now Papa Musu Pedestal, you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
you know. So I think it's the honesty and knowing when to tap in and tap out of it. Do you know what I mean?
Can I step off the pedestal without feeling guilty?
Give yourself permission to not feel guilty.
But how do I do that? Because the moment you, like you said, you get put on that pedestal sometimes. You don't ask for it.
Yeah.
You know? No one, not about, but I didn't ask to be the firstborn daughter. I didn't ask to carry that weight.
Yeah.
So when I feel like it's heavy, and I'm like, actually, I want to step away from this pedestal. I don't think I can do this.
Yeah.
There's so many, like the people supposed to be supporting you sometimes struggle as well.
Yeah.
When you step away from the
Yes.
pedestal. When you're like, yes, I'm actually okay now. I can't do this. I need to step back. Then it's like, then who's supposed to do it if not you?
Yeah.
So it's hard
It's
to step away.
honestly communicating that you have no mental capacity to
But do
deal.
they listen?
Sometimes they don't have to listen, but you have to just do it anyway, because then we fall into chronic fatigue.
Yes.
You know, we fall into chronic fatigue. At some point, back in the days where thina ke safunda kulezi ikole yabona ingane masisho ukuthi safunda kuphi ziyahleka, but anyways,
Wow.
back in the days we kukhona into, was it a debate thingy, I think, where we were talking about a woman's places in the kitchen. That was the topic, and mine was against that.
Okay.
So when I was going through my own dealings and whatnot and the pressure, and I called my brother and I was like, actually, I remember I took part of that debate side, right? Ngehlise driver, like ngiyabong. I'm now, I want to go back. Ngithi, the woman's place is in the kitchen. You know, and I think you listen to your body. You know when you're not okay. You know when you've done a lot. You know when your body's under pressure. And I think if people really care much about you, they would let you have those little pockets of break.
But then...
And communicate that though. Communicate that, right? Just don't go AWOL now. Okay. Communicate and upartner wakho melazi ukuthi you're not there to fuguza. You're not in a relationship. It's a two-way thing. Do you know what I mean? It's a partnership thing, and you want to be a girl in a relationship. And I think though sometimes we step into relationships also wearing amacocks.
That's the thing.
No, baby way. Gizo show up, but
not right now. Right now, I just need to
Yeah.
step back.
Yeah.
It's sometimes so hard because, like I say, you've stepped on the pedestal.
Yeah.
No one wants to step off the pedestal. It's like
Yeah.
on a podium.
Yeah.
You know, you move up to third place.
Yeah.
And then, okay, you get up to first place. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
the first position is
Yeah.
the hard one.
Yeah.
Because when you're standing on the podium at the top,
Yeah.
you know, you've shown people you can do it.
Yeah.
You've done it.
Yeah.
Now you were like, I don't want to
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's allowing ourselves to, creating an environment that allows you to be, for an example, the CEO of the company and also be the next girl, like like girl next door type of thing.
Yes.
I think I would rather have that where I have, moments where I am that girl and I'm the girl.
Yeah, but I want those moments. I think a lot of young girls like ourselves want those moments, but it's so hard to step into the one then back into the other without you self-sabotaging yourself or feeling guilty about doing it. Because now when you step down and you don't show up enough, now you're lazy, you're not doing enough. You want everything to be handed to you, and it's like, no, I'm just tired.
I think, ogunye is that one, for an example, you sometimes, this maybe what is expected of you. Are you sure that this is what the world expects of you, or this is what you expect of yourself?
See, you've hit a nerve there. You've actually touched on it, because I don't think anyone or most people ever do perception to think like, what's the world expecting of me?
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, we're so quick to give expectations for ourselves and pressure on ourselves that we never step back to be like, okay, what does the world or the people around me expect of me? How do they want me to show up? So I think that's where the challenge starts from. So now when a girl, you've made it, and there's the stigma that marriage, kids, that's the goal to define that you're a successful woman. But I love the narrative and how it's changing, where more women now are saying, no, actually, my success is defined by my career. My success is defined by being a mom. Like we're defining our own success stories. But for those majority who are still struggling, I think, especially for Black women, it's very hard for us. I'm so sorry to break it down. It's the experience I know and what I've seen as well around me. How do we, encourage and navigate? Because now there's a young girl, Slambe, who's had a teenage pregnancy. She's being blamed for the pregnancy. The man, his life is continuing. How do you now pull that girl out from that psychological damage where the whole community, Mpatwang, is labeling her as, a young girl who was not looking after herself or behaving well, but not knowing that she was coerced or pushed into an uncomfortable situation by the male partner who's now going off scot-free. No one even knows he's the dad. So how do you help a woman now, a young one who's listening right now or watching, with this is how you can come out of this. This is how you deal with this when the people around you don't support you. I think it is, I would say, dreaming. Okay.
Where do you want your life to be?
Okay.
And not defining yourself with a circumstance.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
Not defining yourself with a circumstance. And after that circumstance, what is the plan? What is the plan? Yes, now there's a child. Yes, people are against you. Yes, family has turned against you. Yes, you no longer have friends that you had because now a 16-year-old Ngangawe, you now has an experience, angakai experience yena, and some could look at that as, they would even use words like we reject. And I think a lot of that trauma on its own, you can decide. You're allowed to decide what you want to do with that circumstance. If you want it to change for better, for you and that child, it can. You must know that it can change. But then again, you need to be honest about what is it that you're going to trade off for you to get there, for you to get to that dream, whatever dream, you have in your head. There's a lot that you need to, I think, trade off so that you're very tunnel vision and you focus on what needs to be done. But give yourself, I would say, permission to be a kid again. Give yourself permission to be a kid again. Bring that little kid, innocent kid along with you, which I think also even with the previous, the conversation we just had now about us putting ourselves in a pedestal, whether males or females, because they've got their own pressures as well. I think in my experience, what I've realized is that we as individuals don't give ourselves permission to bring a little Slindile along the journey and the phases. That's Slindile that needed a hug. That's Slindile that needed a kiss on the cheek. That's Slindile that was playful. I think because Ngobusumdala, you want to behave like you're old. But there are spaces where you can be that person, but there are still spaces like Ikaya, Nabangani, and people that you feel safe around, where you can still be a kid again, because that's where the joy is. There's no joy in adulthood.
Hey. There isn't.
There's no joy.
We have to make that joy ourselves.
No, there's no joy. There's no joy. There's no joy.
Life is so much better when you're a kid.
Yeah.
So now that I like how you've actually kind of opened the conversation for us. I want us now to dive a bit more in those tools and guidance in psychology for someone, dealing with the emotional baggage, whether it's in, pedestal pressures,
Yeah.
grieving and loss pressures,
Yeah.
or navigating
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
What are some of the tools one can use
Yeah.
for themselves in the
Yeah.
everyday setting?
Yeah. I think one would be, of course, therapy, because then we get paid, right? Therapy, and then the health tools, depending on how or which circumstance you're dealing with. One is just to open up and acknowledge where you're at as a person, because in doing so, then ukuthi indlela kumele ibheke kuphi,
Yes.
and also, if you are a person, for an example, who drinks, be mindful of the fact that you could drink a bit heavier because of trying to not deal. So responding in a manner that you need to respond ngakhona. Ukhala, for an example, is part of processing, is part of the coping mechanism, because you're letting everything out, you're giving yourself permission to fully feel. So enye into singayenzi, we don't wanna feel, we're scared to feel. We're scared to confront our emotions that we feel uncomfortable with, whether that's dealing with whatever life situations and whatnot. I would say another coping mechanism would also just be, apart from kuluma about stuff and getting your support and coping mechanisms on how to deal with stuff, but I would also just say, what is it that you love doing? What do you love doing? Can you do more of those things that you love doing?
Okay.
Let it be, though, on the healthy side of things.
Okay.
People find jogging as part of coping, find gym as part of coping, find prayer as part of coping, use belief system as part of a coping mechanism, and journaling. Some people journal and then you read it back. You know exactly how you feel. Now, you're not going to be all over the place. You know exactly how you feel because you've written it down, And I would say also part of, healing is support system yakho. How solid is it? If you don't, because it doesn't have to be family, if you don't have family support, obana baseduzane kwakho who feel like family, how often do you spend time with them and doing things that you love, and tapping into, I would say, anything that makes you feel you again. Yeah.
I like that. So the key thing, anything that makes you feel like you again.
Yes.
Use that,
Yeah.
beyond therapy.
Yes.
Find what makes you feel like
Yes.
you. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, Sli, just to now sum up everything and the episode and all the discussions we've had, I want us to look a bit more in terms of taking it back to the grieving discussion we were having earlier.
Yes.
What would you say are the myths around grieving and what it means to grieve and dealing with the loss of a loved one or someone close to you?
Yeah. I would say the myths are time heals. If you're not crying, you're not grieving,
Hey.
you would eventually get closure.
Okay.
Those are the myths I would think of that comes to my head. Yeah.
And I think you've touched on the point strongly because I think I'm also guilty of those myths myself.
Yeah.
Especially on what time heals. Would you say then that time doesn't heal grieving? And is there ever a time where you get closure for grieving? I just want us to unpack now those myths a bit more.
Yeah. I think time is a contributing factor to getting to accepting that this person has. So it allows you to, right? But just it's on its own, akuna time frame.
Yeah.
I think it is allowing ourselves to get there naturally. Kungabi nemgomo ebekiwe ukuthi okay uzohila ngalesi sikhathi and whatnot. So I think the getting closure, I think people just, like I said, people grieve differently, they process differently, they express the hurt and the pain and every other symptom of grieving differently, emotionally and psychologically. So I think, depending on what support you have around you, I think maybe that could be maybe one way of looking at maybe iyona into engakusiza leyo to get to the acceptance stage.
Okay.
I don't want to say quicker, but I would say maybe like just you taking your own time in allowing those emotions to manifest, to ukuthi process, and you would eventually get to a space where you feel like it is now a bit lighter to navigate loss. Ngendlela ofuna ngayo ukuthi navigating ngakhona, there is no one way of getting there, but I think a combination of I would say intentional practices and coping mechanisms, healthy coping mechanisms that would get you there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then with what you've just said now, there are a number of families or individuals who might be experiencing grief, and you've kind of touched on a point of finding practical tools. What is a message right now you would say to someone who's lost someone yesterday and someone who's lost someone 5 years ago, where it shows a common ground between them because they're all still dealing with grief, like as you've outlined?
Yeah. I would say that one, it is a normal reaction that you're experiencing. I think we, us as individuals and people around us, sometimes we're not patient enough to allow ourselves and each other to go through the process in a natural way. And again, sometimes people would even label people as crazy if they are delaying, or they delayed in terms of getting there ngendlela basuke bona be expecting ngakhona. So you're not crazy for going through what you're going through. The wave of emotions that you're experiencing or feeling, or that you even felt years ago, when they show up, when those experiences come back, when you're having those flashbacks, it is normal. It is a normal reaction. And there are certain things that also trigger the memory for those who've lost people 5 years ago, or a year ago, or 2 years ago, a month ago. And those triggers are different for people. We get triggered differently. And in honor of that person, sit with those memories and the experience you've had with those people, and let that be udondolo lwakho, so to say, in navigating all of this. I don't think that you ever forget a person, or how people have made you feel, or how that experience on its own, the traumatic experience, made you feel. But what you can do is to sit on those memories that you had with them as a way of ube closer to them and cherish whatever legacy, if it's a legacy, of that person that you've lost.
Perfect. I like that. In closing, I think it's important, the information you've shared and, the guidance and tools you've given us.
Yeah.
For someone now who feels like I'm ready now to speak to someone, to see a clinical social worker, therapist, how can they get a hold of you?
Yeah.
And can you tell us a bit more what you and your practice, what you guys specialize in, what you do?
Yeah. We specialize in traditional therapy, so to say. That would be your grief, your marital issues, your relationship issues, stress and mental health related issues. And the support, of course, is costly. Bantu bangathuki, not so much. I think it is time that we prioritize our mental health. And just like how, would go out and whatnot, that's how much of a self-care, even internally and psychologically, as well, taking care of yourself. In terms of where you can contact me, you can email us on email address yami, which is Thabede, not Thabete, Slindile-Thabede@outlook.com, or you can use our office line, which is 078-075-9402, to book an appointment, or just to send any inquiries. That number is on WhatsApp as well. We would attend to it and call you back if we have to, and let's have a chat.
Thank you so much,
you.
Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining
Thank
us
you.
today and just helping us unpack what it means to deal with emotions and what it means to deal with grief, and that griefs have different categories and
Yes.
subcategories. So we're really grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for what you do for 21st Century Funerals. I know we work very closely with you guys as well in terms of helping our own employees and our clients as well. So for that, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your knowledge as well with our audience as well. So thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
Thanks.